Hey, North Dakota, Rob Port here.
And I'm Chad Oban. We're back for another live recording of Plain Talk on Wednesday, April 23rd at Peacock Alley in beautiful downtown Bismarck.
We'll be interviewing special guests, reacting to the latest headlines, and answering questions from the audience.
Admission is free, so plan to arrive early, grab a great spot. We'll kick things off around 5:30.
That's Wednesday, April 23rd at Peacock Alley in Bismarck, starting at 5:30 p.m.
We'll see you there.
This episode is presented by Bakken Backers. After years of blocked permits and stifling regulations from Joe Biden, President Trump is unlocking America's energy potential.
We have more liquid gold under our feet than any nation on earth.
With executive orders for drilling and pipeline investments, just as he did in 2017 for the Dakota Access Pipeline.
And now I fully authorize the most talented team ever assembled to go and get it.
This is the moment to secure North Dakota's future, to stop radical outsiders who threaten our state's energy industries, and to grow our energy production, communities, and economy.
It's called Drill, Baby, Drill.
Support the Bakken and learn more at backthebakken.org.
You're listening to Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. I'm your host, Rob Port. If I sound distracted, it's because I've been busy covering this story all morning. I'm joined by my co-host, Chad Oban.
He's right of center, I'm left of center, both sides of the political spectrum.
I think it's cathartic. I think it's a necessary and proper debate. I'm glad we're having it.
And honestly, we have to do better.
Okay, I don't know why I'm getting blamed for this, right? Welcome to Plain Talk. In the second part of the show, Chad and I are going to talk about a very interesting committee hearing the Senate Finance and Tax Committee just had about property taxes, which has left me completely flummoxed as to what we've been doing in the past several weeks on property taxes, because it kind of seems like the committee, and I say this, they received an amendment. They have not acted on the amendment. They've adjourned now until their afternoon session, so we're recording this in between. It sure says, first of all, they're moving the credit up. They moved it down. The original credit for Governor Armstrong and Representative Mike Napie's bill was at $1,550. The Senate moved it down. The House moved it to $1,450. Senate moved it to $1,250. Now the Senate's putting it back up to $1,650, and they might get rid of a 75% cap on the amount that credit can replace of your property tax bill. Both of those things were initiatives of Senate Majority Leader David Hogue, and now it kind of seems like we're going backwards, and why didn't they just pass the original bill? Like, what are we doing? Anyway, we're going to talk about that.
I cannot wait to talk about this in the second half because I did not watch the hearing, so I can't wait to hear why we don't already have a bill signed.
Yeah,
if this is the process
it was something. And the thing is, they're moving in my direction, so I don't want to.
Right.
I don't want like I'm complaining. This is the direction I wanted to head in, but I'm a little flummoxed as to why we took this route to get there. But the legislature's going to legislate. Yeah. And nobody knows more about well, now I shouldn't say nobody. Somebody who knows a lot about the tomfoolery that our lawmakers get up to is Brent Sanford, who used to preside over the North Dakota Senate as lieutenant governor. You know, he was once upon a time Watford City Council, mayor of Watford City, which is a beautiful community. Then he became a lieutenant governor. Then he left the lieutenant governorship. He's done all sorts of stuff. He's and climbing the ladder quickly in the university system. Became president of Bismarck State College. Now chosen to be the chancellor of the North Dakota University System. Brent, how are you?
Great. Thanks for having me, Rob and Chad. I'm excited to talk about it.
It looks like you're still in your Bismarck State office, though.
I am.
When do you get to move? When do you get to move to the big office, the chancellor's office?
2 weeks. So we've got 2 weeks to try to figure out this calendar of what do we want to do in the last 2 weeks. And I have to tell you, it's a lot sooner if there was going to be a time to be out of this position than any of us expected. I mean, I had a 12-month contract, and it's been a blur for 3 months with starting when I began, they already had started session. So here I am with picking up a appropriations bill. I had been consulting with Bismarck State for a year and blissfully not having to worry about this kind of stuff. And then start once session has already happened after the first week and go through session, following that approach bill. They're trying to kick that out at the same time as the chancellor resigns and the board meets and names me as interim chancellor. So yeah, for our Bismarck State calendar, it's a little quick. It's soon. We've got a month to go before graduation. But from system wide, I mean, I work for the board, and that's the direction they want to go, and I'm willing and I'm able, and I got to admit, I'm super excited about a statewide focus again. So I'm ready to go.
So Brent, you won't be. So they'll name another interim president at BSC. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Larry Scogan do both gigs at one point, both the interim chancellor and the BSC president, or did he give up the BSC president when he was interim chancellor?
My understanding is they named an interim president here. I believe it was Dave Clark, who was executive VP, and they have named at the same time. I don't know if they ended up getting it in the press release at the same time, but Dan Leingang, our vice president of Dr. Leingang, will be the interim president. He's vice president of academic affairs. He's been here for 25 years. I mean, Dan is beloved on campus, and so he'll function as, he's also signing a 1-year contract to function as interim president of BSC, and he is very interested in permanent presidency of BSC. And so it's a quick move all around. And then we had to shuffle up another one of our deans into Dan's position. So Alicia Udy will be interim vice president of academic affairs. So it's just opportunity abounding in higher ed these days.
Chancellor of the university system is one of those positions that whenever we make a new hire, and speaking as somebody who's been a pain in the ass for multiple university system chancellors now, I always wonder, why would anyone want that job? Like it's difficult now, and I say that like I'm joking, but I'm kind of not, because the way I look at it, like the universities all have constituencies, right? They have communities that really love their institutions. They have business leaders who, obviously have various interests in having those campuses in their communities. You have the sports fan bases, which would maybe particularly important in the East. The chancellor doesn't have a constituency. Right. And I think that in some ways can make it very difficult, especially when you're making decisions that might prove unpopular with some of the campuses. It's a really thankless job. And I wonder if I could give truth serum to some of our past chancellors about whether they ever should have taken the job in the first place. It's a pretty tough one. I guess speak to that, because there's a lot there to navigate.
Yeah, good question. That's probably the most common question. And I've had people who have known me a long time. One of them I worked with at Eide Bailey, known him my entire professional career, said, "You've proven that you like dysfunction and you like to jump into that." Oh, okay. Thank you, but whatever. Another one, "You don't mind chaos." But the ones that I feel really good about are notes from people saying, I enjoy seeing someone from outside of higher ed that has a perspective, a statewide perspective, that has private business perspective, that has elected official perspective. Maybe this is what we need. And that's more where I'm coming from. Is I hope it's not that I'm some kind of junkie for chaos, for goodness sakes. But there's a lot in higher ed in general, especially with what's happening at the federal level. I mean, there's a lot of people that say, why in the world would you want to go this direction? And to give a little bit of a sidebar, I told you before, this wasn't really where I was intending. After resigning from lieutenant governor, I was thinking more private sector without specific plans, but thinking energy and such, and end up working in energy. But they're asking me to help with government. Okay, we know you know how to work and navigate through government, being in it for so long, since 2006, right? And so, and then getting an opportunity, I was asked by Kevin Black, who's on the board, and by President Jensen, please serve on the Envision 2035 energy breakout for the higher ed project for what does energy look like for the year 2035. And I hesitated, but I agreed. And so that was the kickstart to consulting agreement to help with workforce and economic development, grand energy, all these different ideas that Bismarck State had to deploy to where the jobs need to be filled, and how does higher ed deploy in exactly the way that the workforce situation demands and that those employers are looking for. And so it was fascinating, right? But it's where, so to me, it was government and employers and past experience with having to navigate between them, and it ends up being a good fit. And so I feel good about it. I mean, it's something where this is a place where we can truly try to gain some focus on being that workforce solution for the state. And that's not the type of words that you generally hear out of higher ed, right? You hear those words out of commerce and out of governors and out of legislatures. And I know the language that these other folks speak. So the people in higher ed say, yeah, you know that side that ends up being intimidating and adversarial against higher ed is the elected official side, right? And so I hope to be able to bridge the gap. I hope that my former colleagues see this as an opportunity of, okay, we have someone that can bridge the gap, that understands all sides. And so what a stroke of luck to be able to have been an interim president for 3 months and to go through the chaos of the growth at Bismarck State and a legislative session and get to know how it works with the cadence of all the different titles, all the levels of accreditation and the different boxes you have to check for that. I've had meetings with faculty senate like crazy because there was a post-tenure review bill that was put in place that was the most controversial bill for faculty around the state. And so I've had a lot of meetings with faculty senate. We're trying to work through the wounds from what was happening, what the distrust that they feel from the words that are coming out from the federal level, from legislative level. And, so it's been quite a learning experience in 3 months. And now I have that experience going into the chancellor's office. I wouldn't have had that before. And frankly, not a lot of people that end up in those administrative positions have had that position. So it's turning out where I feel pretty good about the background and coming into it and the viewpoint going forward. There's a system office that has a lot of staff, a lot of positions. We need to look at, evaluate all of them. How do we help the campuses? How does the chancellor help the presidents? I mean, I'm telling Dan Leingang, I will be there for you in this position. I will be your boss, just as I have been the last 3 months. We will be tackling this together and I'll also be able to have those relationships with other presidents from the other universities and colleges. So I'm really excited about it.
So Rob sort of stole my question of why in the world would anybody want this job, but I'm going to pivot slightly. I think it is an interesting time to be coming into this chancellor. I think the Board of Higher Ed is pretty good right now. I think Levi Bachmar is going to be a really great addition to that Board of Higher Ed. But I think one of the things that's really difficult about this position is you talk about BSCs exploding. You talk about UND and NDSU being these incredible research universities, but then you also have Botno, right? And you also have Valley City State and Mayville State. How do you balance all the needs of those universities and the need? I mean, you brought up the needs of the faculty at BSC and spending time in the relationships. The faculty and staff at these universities are very different between Botno College and NDSU. So, I mean, it's a lot of different folks looking at things from very different lenses. How do you balance all of those different perspectives?
Well, and so, yeah, just to have that experience at Bismarck State, it's very valuable. And then you take that to a macro concept of this with NDSU and UND. It's not going to be easy. And the good thing is I don't have to recreate the wheel because we have very competent presidents. We have a really good group of presidents. They all have their own challenges. And the challenges that I've been involved with for the last year and a half have been, okay, try to map the workforce needs with what's being provided from the public higher ed system. And so we have challenges at Dickinson State. We have a new president. We have declining enrollment over a number of years, period of time. All of us came up a bit this year, which is really great. When we're not having that enrollment cliff from other states because our population is situated a bit differently because of the influx during the boom, right? So we have opportunities where we should all be growing. Some could be growing a little faster. So what is that? Is it a business model issue? Is it a leadership issue? Is it a resource allocation issue? And get in there and visit with these presidents about what can we do to help our local workforce needs with the programs we have and the programs we should develop. But first things first, we have a new president in Dickinson State. So Scott Molinder will need some help from the chancellor's position. I can tell you personally, there's going to be the reason for me to be able to spend more time with him than others at certain points. We have a position to fill in Devil's Lake immediately. It'll be within 2 months of me taking the job. We'll have Doug Darling's retirement. So putting those new presidents in position with support and then trying to get a handle on their own institutions of what I encountered at Bismarck State was a really solid team, really solid middle level of authority, and then great faculty, not a lot of turnover. It's something where it had been we'd gotten to a really efficient point through my predecessor. So it's more of a growth challenge point now of what do we do as we're growing back into these programs and into the new programs. It might be different at some of our other institutions. You mentioned Botno. I mean, some of these colleges that are in smaller communities wouldn't have the blessing you do in Bismarck, where you have a 120,000 person community around you asking for more and more and more and more. How can you help the healthcare facility with the nursing needs that we have? You know, we have opportunities like that. Are those opportunities the same in smaller communities? They might not be, you know, so our system is broad, diverse, a lot of differences in between them. I go back to the early days of our Burgum administration, and the governor really wanted to have a tiered approach to it because he said these three different groups of institutions are so different.
Brent, I wanted to ask you about something you talked a little bit about. You've referenced a couple times now things that are happening at the federal level. We saw some of that. One of the things is a very aggressive regime regarding immigration. And we saw that touch recently at North Dakota State University, where I guess it was a student who, I guess I don't know specifically what the status, but the student was here legally, participating in a program that allowed them to pursue education through work. They were doing that at the university, and the university got notice that that person's being deported. I know that personally you're passionate about this. After you left government as lieutenant governor, you worked for the North Dakota Petroleum Council on immigrant recruitment, bringing specifically people maybe over from Ukraine,
Yep.
people who already had, you know, experience in the energy. We did an interview about this, bringing them over into North Dakota to fill some of our chronic labor shortage here. When I look at what's happening, I mean, I think North Dakota's universities, all of them, have a significant number of foreign students who are here on various visas or programs. They're here legally, but they're not citizens. We have researchers, we have faculty who are here in that same way. How are you going to navigate that? Because it's not just, you know, that maybe some of these people are going to be acted upon by the federal government, but also the message that the federal government may be sending to future waves of potential students or researchers or faculty who might be considering coming to a place like North Dakota to work or to get an education. I mean, if we lose some of that, you're talking about enrollment problems. That could potentially be a significant blow to enrollment. So, I mean, you're kind of walking into a pretty tough situation. Have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, we have a really competent vice president of student affairs here, Kaylin Bondi, who has a plan for if ICE shows up on Bismarck State campus, and we have some students that are international students, and I can tell you, my new niece-in-law is from Canada, and they got married during college, and she hasn't been a resident very long or a citizen very long, and Canadians are even nervous about this. I was just talking to a gentleman at breakfast that said down in Arizona, the snowbirds that are Canadians are selling their house. They're not only offended, but they're scared about this. And so I hope we get this under control and return to an environment where we're respecting legal immigration. And the programs you mentioned, Rob, are all legal immigration programs. The one that I was working with the Petroleum Council, humanitarian parole, is in some cases they refer to it as actually not legal immigration. It's actually a stopgap for people where there's war in your country. And so humanitarian parole is you bypass a lot of the normal process. You're actually given the ability to work immediately when you enter the country, and the countries have to be qualifying for humanitarian parole. Ukraine qualified for, their citizens could qualify for humanitarian parole because there's a war happening in their country. So humanitarian parole is very much under question today. A lot of those workers, it sounds like to me, a lot of those workers that are desiring full-time work status have gone towards green cards and visas, et cetera, and legal immigration. So the employers that I was working with 2 years ago said, "Oh, we're sponsoring our employees that want to stay here long term, and it's going to be okay." So that's assuring. But the point is, with what's happening recently, there's a lot of fear out there. I don't know if it's just from the press. It seems like there's some reality to it, that even if you have a legal visa, there might be some concern. But there's no doubt if we have a protocol here at Bismarck State and have been addressing it, I'll know for sure in May. But I'm assuming that there's a more robust programs at NDSU, UND, the larger universities.
So shifting gears just a little bit, I just thought of this while we were sitting here and talking about the universities and the colleges that are in rural communities. I know this isn't under your purview, but we also have our tribal colleges, which are really great, often partners. And I'm just wondering, does any U.S. partner with tribal colleges? Because when you talk about workforce, I visited the tribal college up in Belcourt recently, and they've got a great education program where it's sort of, grow your own, keeping teachers right there. Does any U.S. partner with the tribal communities and share resources? And obviously the federal cuts are really concerning to the tribal colleges, but can you talk about that relationship a little bit?
Yes, we actually do. And my first meeting in January as president at the higher ed board level, Dr. Twyla Baker from Newtown was from community college up there, was from MHA, was talking about their challenges. They've got enrollment growth. They're looking to do maybe a little bit more CTE. So we've been trying to get together. Ironically, we got together the day that I had to leave the meeting because I was being asked to fill this chancellor position. But great future Vice President of Academic Affairs, Alicia Udy, helped continue the meeting, and our rodeo coach, John Peak, John Peak is like all over this because he's got rodeo athletes from MHA. And so we're looking at partnering on equine studies, and that ends up being where it might feed into a behavioral health. It might feed into a counseling. I mean, it's happening at the Healing Horse facility up there by Partial. And so there's interesting partnerships that can be done and are happening between the tribal colleges. One of the good things that we worked on with Jim Davis, Scott Davis's dad, when he was at Turtle Mountain, was bringing a state scholarship in for the non-enrolled students at the tribal colleges, because if you live in those areas surrounding the reservations or within the boundaries and you're not enrolled, then you'd have to pay full boat, whereas the enrolled members get assistance from the federal government. So the state system has been cooperating, and we try to do more and more with recognizing credits and going back and forth.
What do you think the biggest challenge for the university system? And I agree with Chad. I mean, I think we've got, after some chaos in the past, I feel like we've had a good board. I feel like things have been pretty steady for a while. I feel like we've got some pretty good presidents at the big campuses in particular. I'm not throwing shade at the presidents of the smaller. I think we're doing pretty good overall. Like I think we've got a pretty good place, but from the perspective that things can always improve. What are the challenges as you're looking forward to doing this job for, I'm assuming long term, the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years and beyond?
Yeah. I'm very open to permanency in this position. I can say that pretty comfortably, even though I haven't even started 2 weeks from now. But I'm looking forward to being able to put time into this, of, first of all, accountability and transparency, and that's something that those words aren't just hollow. I mean, that is what the legislature is looking for. If you look at the hearings so far on our appropriation bill, on the policy bills, they really want transparency and accountability. And I think we can bring that. We do have a really good set of presidents. We have a really good staff in the system office. We have good upper level staff that I've been able to engage with from the other institutions. Okay. But then next after that is, okay, what do we do? We take our operations where we're good at educating students, but then how do we play ball in that research phase, that startup and innovation phase? And then how do we make sure that we're responding to the workforce needs? Because for some reason, that isn't always the main metric of, okay, do our graduates, me as a business person, I've always thought it should be, do our graduates get jobs here where people need to hire them? Well, it wasn't so long ago when I was coming out of college, there were no jobs. My dad said, you're going to go get a college degree and you probably move to Minneapolis or Denver and work for a corporation. I'll see you on the holidays, because there's no jobs in North Dakota. That's not the case today. We are actually not building up our own high school grads into the point of where it's addressing our workforce needs. So we've got a lot of work to do. We've gotten better at communicating with counselors, teachers, not just the administrators, but counselors and teachers, and try to get better at communicating with parents of what job opportunities there are for our own kids, because employers by and large say, where am I going to get the employees if I come and invest here? There's not enough people. So we need to be part of that solution. We need to be better in that solution.
Well, I think that's important, especially given that we market, the expense of higher ed. These kids, these families have to incur debt a lot of times in order to afford to go. It's a significant investment, and we justify that by saying, well, on the other end, you're going to get good jobs, and so that needs to be true. But how do you balance that? Years ago, I was invited to be on a panel at Minot State University, and it was a debate about whether, how important humanities were, like the tension between like a very workforce minded education versus, some of the more traditional, maybe classical education, music and art and some of these other things. And I think they were expecting me to come in, right? I was the ogre, right? I was kind of the Philistine at the gate that they were bringing in, higher ed people to bring in, and thought that I was going to be like, yeah, just teach them how to do jobs and nothing else. And I wasn't. In fact, I think the universities make a mistake when they set it up as a choice between like teaching people how to weld or teaching people about Shakespeare. We should be talking about how important it is for welders to know about Shakespeare and vice versa.
Rob, can I add to that before Brandon answers? I mean, listening to the workforce, I was thinking the same thing Rob does. My liberal arts friends are listening and thinking that's not the point of universities, just to create a workforce. It's to create good citizens who can think and all that kind of stuff. So can you, like, what would you say to that when folks are hearing, workforce, and there's that tension?
I feel like I can help bridge the gap between, because the politicians, the elected officials, the employers, the press, I mean, we're talking about the need for trained employees, workforce, opportunities for kids, students, but what our university system does is, yes, you learn when you go there. I came out of there as a graduate of UND, and my dad asked me, "What'd you learn?" I said, "How much I don't know." I mean, it just broadens your mind incredibly, and it's wonderful. But then he also said, "What is your business degree going to be in? You need to have a trade within that. You better pick accounting or finances." Okay, I'll do accounting, but I mean, it should be both. It should. And I want to tell you that it's been a very robust discussion about 90-degree bachelor degrees. One of Representative Maschbacher's bills was on that, to allow that. And his intention was to strip out everything but the major courses only. And I can tell you, the employers say, wait a minute, we want our welders to have a couple business classes. We want our welders to be able to write a memo. We need communications. We need to be able to have them give a presentation, So I mean, the soft skills are desired. Bismarck State on a 2-year degree, technical degree, you're still required of 15 credits of non technical, right? And then on a bachelor, it's 36. We have a model for a computer information system cyber 90 credit bachelor that still has 36 credits of general. So you can still get your communications, your English, your history, your social science. You can still have those courses, which the employers don't want to scrub that part. They want to have all of it.
Well, I want my welder to know how to weld, but I also want him to be able to have a conversation with people and bill in a timely manner, right? I mean, there's a lot of skills.
We have to remember that human beings are not widgets, and we shouldn't be training people to just plug into a particular job. Maybe somebody doesn't want to be a welder their whole life. Maybe physically they can't be a welder that could be a physically demanding job. And maybe there comes a point in their life where they want to move up the ladder and do something less demanding, and they need to have the skills to be able to do that, and being able to teach communication and some of these other things. It's got to be broader. And I think sometimes we're I mean, believe me, I understand the imperative for workforce, everything else. I just, and it's reality. Kids have to get value out of these degrees, or not just kids, anybody who gets these degrees, for what they pay for them. They have to get value out of them. There's no question about it. But they're going to get more value long term with the other part. Anyway, I'm on my soapbox now about the humanities and a well-rounded education. I just think it's important. A couple minutes left, Brent. What you take office in May. What's your first initiative? What do you want to get started on first?
So first of all, get a handle on the office and how the structure works there, and then it's going to be with the presidents. So my main job is obviously reporting to the board, but I'm pretty fluent with the board the way it is. I mean, I've got relationships with board members, but make sure that you're meeting expectations there. But then it's the presidents and then the system office itself, and doing a lot like I did with this. It's a listening tour. I know there's suggestion and insisting basically from the governor and from legislative leadership that you need to do some listening tours as higher ed. And I love those. You know, Rob, that I like just having interviews where it's just unscripted and just ask me questions. I love it, so I look forward to that, with going all around the state to the different communities, the institutions, and meeting with stakeholders and just, hey, what's on your mind? What can we do better? This is what we're trying to do, and just start going from there. And the work tasks come as you're asking those questions, and then you fill those in, find out who on your team can accomplish what, and I'm very much looking forward to it.
Brent, my question: did you plan your start date for about the same time the legislature left town? Was that a purposeful start date?
You'll have to ask the chancellor why he decided to resign on last Friday, because then it all kind of fell into where that was the reality.
Well, maybe he wanted to run through the finish line of the legislative session. Maybe, I don't know.
He must have wanted to break the tape, run through the line. Yeah.
Thanks, Brent.
Thanks, Brent.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Chad.
The cold cases you see at the Vault have captivated readers across our region for years. At the Vault Podcast, our team of professional reporters takes you further into those stories with new interviews from family members, investigators, and experts. Check out The Vault at inforum.com/The Vault and subscribe to The Vault wherever you find your podcasts.
This episode is presented by Bakken Backers. After years of block permits and stifling regulations from Joe Biden, President Trump is unlocking America's energy potential.
We have more liquid gold under our feet than any nation on earth.
With executive orders for drilling and pipeline investments, just as he did in 2017 for the Dakota Access Pipeline.
And now I fully authorize the most talented team ever assembled to go and get it.
This is the moment to secure North Dakota's future, to stop radical outsiders who threaten our state's energy industries, and to grow our energy production, communities, and economy.
It's called Drill, Baby, Drill.
Support the Bakken and learn more at backthebakken.org.
Hey friends, we've got a new way for you to participate in the show. You can now call us or text us with your questions, comments, or anything you want us to discuss on Plain Talk. Just give us a call or shoot us a text message at 701-587-3141. That's 701-587-3141. It's super easy. Leave your message, tell us your name and where you're from, and we might feature it on an upcoming episode.
Thanks for listening to Plain Talk. Now let's get back to today's episode.
Just finished it up with Brent Sanford, and I think we both agree that I think he's going to be a great chancellor. I think he bridges. I think he's a reasonable guy. He's easy to work with. He knows the political ropes. He's got a lot of credibility. I mean, he's a Republican. He's got a lot of credibility. I mean, like it or not, higher ed folks, the state's run by Republicans. Having somebody who speaks their language is helpful to you. But I don't think he's an ideologue. He's a reasonable guy. You can work with him. I think he's going to be great. I think he's a great pick as chancellor.
Yeah, I think this job and the head of human services are the two most impossible jobs in state government. So you said you think he'll do a great job. I think he'll do a good job if he's allowed to do it, right? I mean, this is such a political football position of higher ed. I think he's well situated to do a good job. I think he's a good pick. I hope he becomes permanent, because I don't think we want, people coming and going. I think he understands the ropes. I think he's got a shot here, but higher ed's a tough thing to control, man.
I think because what we either do is when I'm thinking about some of the past chancellors, we either have somebody who is just does it like too much in the higher ed bubble and can't really speak. I think Larry Scogan kind of fell into that role a little bit, can't really speak, or we bring in people from other places. Even though like Mark, our current chancellor, Aggarot is not. I mean, he's from North Dakota originally, but he spent a lot of time away. Sanford's here. He hasn't left here. He's dealt with this. I mean, he presided over many in the Senate, many of the lawmakers who are still there. He was just lieutenant governor. He's got close relationships with our industries that are here. I just think he's a better pick. And it sounds like I'm throwing shade at Aggarot a little bit.
Right.
Some of those limitations aren't his fault, but I think this is a good pick by the board.
And the reality is Hagerot's been in that job for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you think about he's been there for a long time. Those jobs have shelf lives, right? And so if you're doing the job right, you're going to make some people angry. So you're not going to be able to stay in that job for 20 years. That's not the way this job's set up.
And you got to have political. I always laugh at the people who say, like, keep politics out of higher ed. And I know what they're talking about when they say that. But higher ed has some of the most vicious and petty internal politics that I have ever seen. And I make a living from writing about politics. So there's a lot of big egos in higher ed. And someone who can navigate around those and not take things personally is going to be a strength.
I mean, Hagerot had people on the board who, for years just wanted him fired because they hated him so much. But then you had other people who had his back. And I think hopefully we can, again, move the ball forward. But I do think it's very interesting to figure out how to advocate for the needs of Bottineau College and the needs of NDSU. They're just different worlds. I often say it's sort of like a Chihuahua's also a dog, like a Great Dane's a dog. I mean, they're both higher ed, but they're completely different animals, right? I mean, they have different needs. Their staff needs different things. So good luck to them.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's talk about this weird property tax committee hearing.
Tell me all about it, Rob. What are they doing?
Okay, so it's House Bill 1176 was the Nathan Armstrong bill that we've been talking all along. That bill, when it passed the Senate Finance and Tax Committee unanimously, no amendment. And at that point, it had a $1,450 credit, primary resident credit, 3% cap, roll it over for 4 years, no cap on how much of that credit you could get. You could get, I mean, I guess the only cap would be you can't get more than what your property tax bill, but everyone could potentially get the full credit. When it gets that to the Senate Appropriations Committee, Senator Hogue comes in with amendments, and his amendments lower the credit, the maximum credit, from $1,450 to $1,250, and put in place a 75% cap, meaning you can't get more credit than 75% of your property tax bill. So basically, you're capped. Really, only people who own, the larger homes were going to get that full credit. But now that's where it's been kind of sitting for a while. Like, they haven't really done anything with.
I think you told me that they finally appointed the conferees on the House side yesterday. It's been a couple weeks.
Yeah. So the conferees, meaning because the Senate, and by the way, the Senate ended up passing that bill. So because the Senate amended the bill, the House and the Senate have to negotiate. They come up with a unified bill that both chambers can pass. Just yesterday, the House appointed its conference committee members on 1176, which is the Nathan Armstrong bill. But today, and now I'm forgetting, it's Representative Scott Lauser's bill. We had Representative
I think 1168.
1168, that's the number. They took that bill and they hog-housed it, which I don't know where that term came from.
I don't know either, and I thought it was more of a universal term, but I talked to some people nationally and like, what are you talking about hog-house? It's a North Dakota upper Midwest thing.
It's a very North Dakota thing. But hog-housing is basically where they take all the language out of a bill and just replace the whole text, pretty much. And that's what they did with Lauser's bill, and they turned it into a copy of 1176. But what the amendments do is they move the credit back up even beyond. The original Nathan bill was at $1,550. So they moved the credit back up to $1,650. And it sounds like now the committee, took, and they did some other things. And a lot of these were technical fixes, like kind of the timing of when the state pays out the credit, all of which seem reasonable. Like the counties were saying, because of the timing thing and when they have to make their decisions by law, they need the credit showing up at a different time, or that's whatever. But it sounded like, moving the credit up from $1,250 to $1,650. And then during the committee discussion, Senator Rummel was basically saying, let's get rid of the cap too. Like, this skin in the game stuff doesn't make any sense. He says
and when you say get rid of the cap, you mean the cap on the 75% cap, not the cap on cities and counties.
Not the cap. That stays the same, where it's still a four year. The one thing they did is they did say that the tax credit can be applied to voter approved levies, whereas previously it couldn't be. So they opened that up, which I think is fine. But this is the 75% was a part of but it sounds like this afternoon, what they're going to be discussing is getting rid of the cap. Now, I don't know, but part of me is wondering, why are we doing it this way? That's the
So
thing.
I think we have to be careful when we talk about caps, so people aren't confused that we're
Yes.
talking about the cap on property taxes.
The
So,
cap on the credits.
Rob, let me go through this because I didn't watch it this morning, okay? So earlier in the session, Senator Hogue in the Senate decided to lower the amount of the primary tax credit to $14.50 to $12.50. They also put a cap on the amount of the benefit to 75% because they want everybody to have, quote, skin in the game. And then they passed that bill out of the full Senate. And now a Senate committee basically is looking at undoing all of the Senate amendments on another bill to move it to the floor. I'm going to ask you a question.
By the way, before there's even been any negotiations between the House and
Right.
the Senate on the original bill. Like one House member said, we haven't even had a chance to make them mad yet. Like they just appointed their negotiators yesterday. That conference committee hasn't met yet.
Rob, I'm going to ask you a very difficult question.
Right.
What does the North Dakota Republican Senate caucus want from property taxes? We're on day 63, 64. Nobody can answer that question today.
I don't know. I am completely flummoxed. Like I've been trying, yesterday when I heard that this amendment was going to be coming in committee, I was thinking, well, this is Hogue. Maybe like this is just me trying to make sense of it. So maybe this is just completely wrong. But I was like, well, maybe he's doing this because he feels like he's been getting beat up by the governor's office. I know he made some comments in the press about the governor's office having the bully pulpit. And he said, we do have these other bills. So maybe this was him saying, well, do whatever you want on this bill. We'll just move the debate over to this bill. But then the amendments brought to the bill, if anything, it's a higher credit than the governor ever started with.
Right.
And they completely get rid of the skin in the game, which was the whole argument that Hogue made. And by the way, I shouldn't say that they've gotten rid of it yet. I don't know that the committee's going to do that. But from the
That's
discussion,
the discussion.
It seems like they're heading in that direction.
So who brought the amendments? Was it the chairman? Was it Weber?
Weber brought
Okay.
it.
So last night we sort of talked this through, trying to figure out sort of what's happening here. And after you and I talked, and after my son told you on the phone how the Yankees are terrible, and like went straight into really great smack talk, I was so proud of him.
Evan did good. I had to hold back because I can't be mean to a little boy. But
yeah, but I talked to several different people about sort of, just like, what do you think is happening here? And like, what would the strategy be? And pretty much everybody came to the same conclusion as you and I. Beats me. Nobody knows. Nobody understands. And I think at this point in the session, people think they're playing like this, like this complicated chess game, when in reality, they're just talking themselves into circles.
Well, it's like the Senate is negotiating with themselves. Like, I mean, if you go and you try to buy a used car from somebody, and it's like, I make an offer and then I make another offer and I'm not even letting them respond to me.
Yeah.
Right. Like, well, I'll give you 500. Well, maybe 650. Well, maybe 800. Right. Like, what are you doing? Like, let them say no.
In my real life, I'm somewhat familiar with contract negotiations. And I will tell you, that's not a good approach.
I don't understand what they're doing. Now, I think I don't want to complain about any of this. I want to say thank you that they're coming to their senses, because I don't think the skin in the game thing was a good idea. I don't think that lowering the credit was a good idea. I'm glad if they, and it does seem like they're going to raise the credit. That's great. That is part of the amendment. It also seems like the committee, and I hate, do it because by the time people listen to this, the committee's probably going to happen and all this is going to be old news. But if they do also get rid of the cap, great. Then that's exactly what I want. Get rid of, get rid of the cap on how much of the credit you can get. If they do those
how we
things,
can confuse the hell out of people. Are going to be like, they're getting rid of the cap, so they're just doing the same thing they've done the last 20 years.
The cap on spending is still going to be there.
Yeah.
The cap on the amount of, I don't think, I mean, in this environment, I mean, just as a practical political matter, people are so mad about their property taxes. I don't think it's a good idea for the legislature to propose a credit. Say, we're going to give you this credit, but we're going to put a cap on how much you can enjoy that credit. That was a terrible idea.
But here's what I'll say about this whole thing. If they end up at the Nathan Armstrong bill, I think you said it earlier, legislator is going to legislate. That's what's happening here. It is a little bit frustrating, though, because so many other spending decisions are dependent on how much money gets spent or not received, like how much money gets spent on this property tax bill. If they could have come to a conclusion 2-3 weeks ago, sort of on the timeline that the governor wanted, it would have made the rest of the session a lot easier. I think often at this point in the session, they're just like, they say they want to get out, but there's not a lot of indications they actually want to get out because they play all these games.
I mean, if no cap on the credit and at $16.50 is what they could have just passed the governor's bill, it would have been at $15.50 or $14.50, I guess, as it came out of the House. They could have just passed the bill that they had before them, and we could have been done with this. And the technical fixes, which again I think are good, you could have done that in the law. You could have hoghoused the Louser bill to turn it into these technical fixes, and we could have been done with this issue.
And if you wanted a higher credit, you could have done that, sent it over to the House, and I guarantee they would have concurred, and we wouldn't have gone to conference committee.
Nobody is fighting, other than David Hogue. Nobody is fighting for a lower tax credit right now, property tax credit.
And again, we talked some about how, like, I'm confused on the lower tax credit. He's a conservative. He's somebody who I think wants to put more money in the pockets of folks. And maybe the public doesn't care between $12.50 and $14.50 and $16.50, but it seems strange that he would want to lower the tax credit for people, just like ideologically.
I do think the public would care if they're told, if we come out and the news articles are all about a specific dollar figure, and then they get their property tax bill and they found out about the 75% cap on how much of that credit they can get. That is a recipe for a backlash.
I agree. But do you I still don't understand why the Senate appropriations lowered the credit. I mean, I think they can make a case for the skin in the game argument. There's an argument to be had, but lowering the credit never made any sense to me for a conservative group of lawmakers.
Well, they're going back up with the credit, and I think that's great. And if
maybe. I mean, we don't know. I mean, that's what they're trying to do in the committee.
That part is in the amendment. The amendment is yet to be acted on by the committee.
So, but even if they pass it, then it goes back to the Appropriations Committee, who voted a month ago to lower the credit. Like, it's all just, it's silly.
It really is.
Pass a bill. Pass a bill.
Let's get this. Speaking about passing a bill, the book ban bill passed, 2307, introduced by Senator Keith Boehm, after a lengthy debate on Monday, I should say, and then a lengthy reconsideration debate on Tuesday. That bill has been sent to Governor Armstrong. I suspect, and I'm again not speaking that I have any knowledge here, but I suspect the governor's probably going to veto it, much as Governor Burgum vetoed it. I think that our former criminal defense attorney governor is not going to look kindly on using the criminal justice system to decide debates over library books. I have a feeling that bill's going to get vetoed. It was very close it was 2 votes away from failing in the House. I wish it had failed. It didn't fail, but I mean, here we are again. It's going to get vetoed again. And you wonder at some point, I will say, and I wrote about this yesterday, the votes on this bill, because there was Bain had a similar bill similar to this last session. Votes were very narrower this time around. When you look at a lot of the other culture war bills that have failed, there is progress in this legislative session. I know it doesn't always feel that way, but there's there's some wind out of the sails. I made that prediction back in January that these culture war bills are going to be facing some tougher headwinds, and I think I've been proven right.
So a couple things. One, I think everybody should contact the governor, ask him to veto this bill, because I think, like you, Rob, that I think he's inclined to veto it, but he should hear from people. The other thing that's interesting, I think this has to go back to the Senate to concur. And so will there?
It's to the governor's desk.
They didn't make any changes on the House side.
Oh no, that came up during the reconsideration debate yesterday, and Representative Pyle noted it does not go back to conference committee. It goes to the governor's desk. So
Okay.
It's at the government.
I thought she may have been mistaken there, but okay. Either way, I wish it would go back to the Senate because I think the Senate didn't see the bill with a fiscal note on it. And so I think that would change that conversation. I think it passed 27-20 over there as well. But either way, like the whole conversation was dumb. I also think, what is the point of a committee?
You are right. Representative Pyle was wrong. It was returned to the Senate. So
Okay. So there'll be another vote in the Senate to see if they want to pass it or not. And so I think that'll again be close. I think people like Sean Cleary, who gave a great speech the first time, will try to kill it again. But again, like one of my frustrations with this legislative session in particular, there's a lot of committee recommendations. This got a 22-1 do not pass recommendation out of appropriations. And it's just getting ignored on the floor. And we saw a little bit of a fight between appropriators and policy committee members play out a little bit. But I mean, there's a reason why not many things go to 22-1 do not pass out of a committee. And it was just ignored because people hate books about gay people.
Well, most of the bills that get those recommendations die.
Yeah, they follow it. Yeah.
There were some complaints about the appropriations committee doing policy, which, that's like the local control argument, right? Like we love it when they do it in our favor and we hate it when they don't do it in our favor. But I should note, it was the bill's sponsor that brought policy amendments to the appropriations committee that they rejected because he was trying to get rid of that fiscal note, and they rejected it, saying you're going to compromise your own bill just to try to finagle it through the door by getting rid of a fiscal note. And then ultimately the fiscal note didn't matter. All these fiscal conservatives don't mind spending millions and millions of dollars because some Karen is upset about a book that references gay. And the thing that's frustrating to me is the people just on the floor ranting over and over again. It's pornography. It's pornography. It's pornography. I will grant that some of the books that they're talking about, which by the way are intended for late teens, are pretty graphic. But I also trust that our librarians are already doing a pretty good job of curating that content and who it's available for. Like just because it's available in a room that children also walk through, because that's basically if you go into most libraries are designed just big rooms with lots of shelves. Just because the kid is in the same room with that book and that book's not locked in a cabinet doesn't mean that a third grader is reading about, right? Like my children walk through my home all the time, and I have books by Henry Miller and stuff, pretty steamy, pretty filthy books. And I'm not too worried about it. Like I'm not threatening their innocence because they're in the same room as that book. This is a made up issue.
Yep.
From the beginning.
In 2 points, I mean, folks brought up there's an incident in Foreman, I believe, in a school library where a book got challenged. They went through the process locally. They had a hearing, and they decided to keep the book, right? And that's the way it's supposed to work. I mean, just because you want it and you don't get your way, you don't change the state law. One lawmaker stood up and basically said, today's librarians are not the same as the librarians when we were in school. Like somehow there's been this like systematic change in who are librarians, and that all of a sudden they're pornographers and indoctrinators. I know some librarians. They seem pretty sweet.
I talk about like the satanic panic era and all that, and because it was formative, like it happened during my childhood. And one of the incidents that happened, I remember when I was a little boy at Iditarod Elementary School in Wasilla, Alaska. There was a food fight over a book that had witches in it. It was like witches in a cauldron. I mean, it was like childlike, but it was like some Shakespeare stuff. Like it was just witches, right? And people were upset. It was, it's teaching kids witchcraft. And there was a big hullabaloo. And I remember our librarian being like, nope, we're going to have that book. So granted, that's an anecdote. Librarians haven't changed that much. That was the 80s.
Yeah.
Librarians haven't changed that much.
But this idea that somehow librarians in our state are, again, librarians are just doing their job. They want to create a place that's good for kids and adults to learn and do so many other things.
And the thing is, like, they'll listen. They understand that each family or each set of parents has different standards. They'll listen, and they can accommodate that stuff. But what I think where most librarians are going to draw the line is that one group of people is going to make a decision about what another group of people get to access in the library. I think they're going to stand against that, and they should. Last thing, Representative Van Winkle, we kind of saw an end to that saga with a very interesting interview she gave to multiple reporters. She would not respond to my inquiries, by the way. I was the first. I reported this story first, I guess, last week, and she never responded to me. But she did speak. I think it became unavoidable that when she came back from vacation, she was going to have to address this. And of course, she casts herself as the victim, which is probably one of the most frustrating things in the MAGA era. Are politicians who are always the victim, like they never do anything wrong. It's always the media that's out to get them, or the other side, Democrats or Republicans or whatever. And it's like, no, you just did something wrong. Like, she should not have taken vacation, a week-long vacation. Now, if she had a sick child that she had to go be with for a week, we wouldn't be talking about this. She went on a ski trip during the busiest time of the legislative session, when things are so fluid and so many things are happening. And I think the people from District 3 in Minot would probably appreciate that their elected official be in the chamber to participate in all these committee hearings and all these debates and cast votes on the important bills that came up while she was gone. And she wasn't. She wasn't there. She went on vacation. The voters deserve to know that, and they can act accordingly in the next election. Maybe it won't matter to them.
Maybe it won't matter to them, but
Maybe it won't.
There's an expectation for these 80 days that legislators show up. I mean, I know stories of legislators this session who were in the emergency room in the morning and were in their committees by mid-morning because, they're committed to their constituents. Also, I think it's important that listeners understand Lori Van Winkle also gets free health insurance for 4 years while she's in office, and she can't be bothered to show up for all 80 days. Kudos to LaFleur for asking her to basically give her payback.
Which is most he can do, pretty much. I mean,
it's the most he can do. I also think, and I think you pointed this out, I think they would have refused her pay if there weren't other legislators who were absent the same day for legitimate reasons,
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
Because, how do you
punish
punish somebody who's sick or, at a funeral or whatever just because Lori Van Winkle decided to go skiing?
Yeah. Even there, I guess, John Bjornson said this, that maybe even that whole vote to excuse thing is just symbolic and doesn't even matter. Which, because
really?
he says the law says they're entitled to that pay. So if somebody really made an issue out of it, they're going to get paid one. And let's be honest, like, the pay is a rounding error in the state budget. It's really just about, and it shouldn't be controversial, the idea that an elected official, whatever their party, whatever their ideology, they should show up for work. That's the whole thing.
And especially, again, we're not talking, I think everybody deserves annual leave.
Yeah.
But in these jobs, it's 4 months every 2 years that
Right.
you have to avoid vacation.
It's hard to do annual leave during the legislative session because they only have 80 days every 2 years. It happens when it happens.
Rob, a tax guy doesn't take vacation the 2 weeks leading up to tax day or the 2 months leading up to tax day.
Look, my job is to cover this legislative session. I never take vacation.
Hey, speaking of which, I heard again you were taking shots at me for taking a vacation last Friday when I was overwhelmed at work.
I did not. I did not. I said I like to take shots at you for taking on vacation when you're gone. By the way, I just want to read some of Van Winkle's quotes. This is she said, "This just falls right in line with all of their efforts to basically intimidate me and make me feel like I can't say the things I'm saying." She continued, "I don't know why I'm being singled out in my absence and why everybody else isn't, so it's a little bizarre to me." And my answer to that would be, you're the only one who took a ski trip during the legislative session for a week.
This group of personal responsibility really has a problem taking personal responsibility, don't they?
Well, I have a column about that too, about raising a generation of snowflakes because of, like, the parenting bill and everything. That, I mean, they're afraid to let their kids be alone with a doctor. They're afraid of what books their kids are going to read in the library. What are you doing to these kids? They're not going to be resilient human beings.
So this wasn't on our list of topics, but that debate about parents and doctors' offices was crazy. Yeah. When there was, like, I think it was Senator Gerhardt who stood up and said, I have 4 kids, and when I'm in the doctor's office with my daughter, it's almost like the doctor's telling me to leave. Well, I don't know how old his daughters are, but at some point in the point of your column, it's weird for a dad to be in the doctor's
I had
office
daughters.
with their
I have
15-year-old
daughters.
daughter.
Right. I have daughters. And when they got to a certain age, the doctor, because I'm sitting there like, I don't know what's going on. Right. So I'm sitting there and the nurse or the doctor would were like, we're going to do this now if you would step out. And I'm like, oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, let me run out of here. I don't want to be in here for this.
Right. Like that's great. And I've never had a problem with that. I wouldn't be nervous if a doctor wanted to like have a conversation with my daughter alone or whatever. These things don't bother me. But again, it's this paranoid worldview where they think doctors are trying to turn their kids gay or vaccinate them or something like that, which your doctors are trying to vaccinate your kids, but they're not just going to shove a needle in their arm because they have ethics.
Yeah.
All right. We gotta put a pin in it there. Remember, you can leave us a voicemail, send us a text, 701-587-3141. We love getting those. Please send them. Follow us on all the social media things, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, X. Our handle on all of them is at Plain Talk ND. And don't forget, we have a live show coming up, Peacock Alley. Next week, we have one more show before the live show coming up Wednesday, April 23rd, 5:30 p.m., Peacock Alley in Bismarck. I hope you show up. I hope you come and listen.
Rob, I heard the legislative sine die party is the evening of the 23rd. So I'd encourage all lawmakers and lobbyists to come to Peacock Alley because I think the sine die party starts later that evening. What a way to drink some beer and then go to the sine die party.
That's right. Also coming up Friday, going to have a guest host. Katie Winbauer is going to be on. Try and break in somebody new as a co.
So, Rob, I'm on vacation on Friday. It's also Good Friday.
It's also Good Friday. Yeah, I wasn't going to say anything.
I would have to get paid time and a half if I was going to work on Friday.
You brought it up. I actually had to be reminded that it was Easter coming up because we're not a very religious household. So I didn't know.
Yeah,
that's coming up Friday. Exciting stuff. All right. Thank you for listening. We'll talk again. That's it for today on Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. Plain Talk is a production of Forum Communications Company. Got a question, comment, or suggestion? Leave us a voicemail or send us a text message at 701-587-3141. That's 701-587-3141. If you haven't subscribed to Plain Talk yet, you can find us on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. For those of you who are already hooked, give us a rating or review. And don't forget to share or tell a friend. Special thanks to my co-host, Chad Oban, and from myself and everyone at Plain Talk, thanks for listening. Speaking as somebody who's been a pain in the ass for multiple university system chancellors now,